Still working on the lighting here. I have another box over there, another light that I just don't feel like setting up right now. I hope the acoustics sound okay. It's kind of echoey. We have multiple carpets in here, so it's not too echoey. If it sounds too echoey, leave me a comment. I would love that feedback. Oh my goodness. I think I just had a package of raw dairy delivered. Yay. Miller's Biofarm is where I get raw dairy. It is so good. And my discount code is tailored. So this video is about a reminder of something that I learned firsthand and that I've walked many clients through. The whole gist of it is, again, there is no one size fits all. This is what I love to emphasize more than anything other than Jesus is king. There is no one size fits all. If you try to do a copy and paste approach compared to someone else, it's just not going to work because we all have bio-individual needs. We're all on a different place on our healing journeys, in a different place. We're all in a different season. So I have a client currently who I finally convinced to go from 2 meals to 3 meals. If someone's doing carnivore already or an animal-based approach, it's very natural to lean towards 2 meals. Sometimes this naturally happens because fat and protein is so satiating. You don't feel like you need to eat as frequently. But if you are healing and there are digestive issues, bile acid imbalance, if you've got histamine intolerance, if you have insulin resistance, eating larger meals is not a good approach, even if it's carnivore, even if it's 0 carbs. Think about all the different mechanisms involved here. So histamine, first of all, we have a histamine bucket. That's how I like to describe it because it's easy to picture. We have a histamine bucket, and when your histamine bucket is full, histamine starts to spill over, and that's when we have symptoms of histamine intolerance. We might have diarrhea, skin rash, drippy nose, heart palpitations. These are all signs of histamine intolerance, itchiness. And so if you're eating 1 or 2 very large meals every day, you are filling your bucket up rapidly. You're not giving your body a proper chance to process that histamine if you already have histamine intolerance. Another completely different angle, digestion as a whole. If your internal organs are healing, your liver, your gallbladder needs healing from whatever angle. Maybe you've got non-alcoholic fatty liver, even just leftover inflammation from that. Maybe you don't have a gallbladder. Maybe you are detoxing, mold toxicity, Lyme disease. Your liver has to deal with those, and that's a burden on your liver. It's more work that it has to do. Every time you eat a fatty meal, your liver produces bile for the gallbladder, so these are both involved. If you have trouble digesting fat, eating larger meals is not a good approach. For all of these instances, no gallbladder, bile acid imbalance, you would be better off doing 3 or even 4 smaller meals from a digestion standpoint. Another angle, I could go on and on, but I'm using 3 angles for this video. Insulin resistance. Most people would think, okay, just the less meals means less insulin, right? Wrong. I have worked with multiple type 1 diabetics. None of them do well with OMAD. None of them. Because 1 large meal requires more insulin than 3 smaller meals. Calories equated. You are placing more of a burden on your body with that huge meal or those 2 huge meals. And so if you're reversing insulin resistance or if you want to burn more fat, calories equated, it actually might be better for you to eat 3 smaller meals versus 1 huge meal. Now, if you are taking the approach of cutting calories, restricting food, then you might do 2 meals or 1 meal, but that is not sustainable, and I do not recommend that here. I can personally attest to saying I was my leanest in a healthy way. I was 69 pounds at one point, but that was sick on my deathbed, nearly. But when I healed, I had gained more weight than I wanted to. It wasn't fat, but I had more fat than I needed on my body. That's what my body needed to feel safe. But I started to drop the fat naturally. I healed my hormones. I understood leptin. I was leptin sensitive and it worked, and the fat started melting off of me. And I literally went from OMAD to eating 2 to 3 meals a day consistently, doing intermittent fasting, 16 hours of fasting, 8-hour eating window. That was the leanest I've ever been in my life in a healthy way. I had abs. I was doing CrossFit at the time. CrossFit was not why I was so lean. I was doing CrossFit later on and I wasn't that lean. It definitely had to do with the consistency and the strategy of my consistency with macros and meal timing. It was awesome. And that's my approach now. I first of all, I'm breastfeeding and pregnant. So of course I'm not going to try to pull off 1 meal a day. I'm typically doing 2 meals a day, but if I have time to do 3 meals a day, I love doing 3 meals a day. It's very, very important for you to gauge what your body is healing from still and what you're trying to optimize, and think about, is this actually placing a burden on my body to eat so much in one sitting? So there is no one size fits all. OMAD was like the trend maybe 3 years ago. Thankfully, I don't think that's a trend anymore. But TUMAD is very popular. Like I said, if that naturally evolves when you're on a carnivore diet and you feel comfortable, good for you. Like I said, I do 2 meals a day, most days these days, because that's what my schedule, it works really well for my schedule. I'm also a volume eater and I have no problem digesting large amounts of food. So if you have bloating after your meals, if you feel distended, uncomfortable, histamine intolerance, if you get a runny nose, if you feel like you have to take a nap after your meals, if you have diarrhea frequently or nausea, I encourage you to think about, am I eating an appropriate amount of food in one sitting, or is it too much, and could this be split up into smaller meals? If you decide to try this, I highly recommend keeping it within the same eating window. So if your first meal is at 10 a.m., I would recommend to try to close your eating window 8 hours later, so around 6 p.m. So if you're doing that now with 2 meals and you switch to 3 or 4 meals, I still think you should be closing your window in 8 hours. That's still ideal because that gives insulin time to get super, super low, and your body can do a lot of healing and recovering when insulin is low in those 16 hours. So that shouldn't change. Your eating window really matters more than how many meals you're eating, and how many meals you eat in that window depends on your bio-individual needs and what is comfortable for you and serving you in this season of life. Almost at 8 minutes. I think that's all I wanted to say. Leave your comments and questions below.